This is the 19th season of Bass Talk Live. BTL is presented by Bass Cat Boats, Strike King Lures, Aftco, Pro Guide Batteries, X-Zone Lures, Shoreline Boat and RV Repair, Spro, Gamakatsu, Big Bite Baits, The Bass Tank, Denali Rods, Beatdown Outdoors, and Sunline.
BTL coming at you.
Good morning and welcome to another exciting edition of BTL Bass Talk Live, where we are going to talk about bass fishing. Recorded show today. I'm currently out on the lovely waters of Oklahoma's Lake Eufaula, trying to catch some fish for the upcoming, find some fish, not necessarily catch some fish. We're getting a little strategy today. We got a guy on today he likes the strategy aspect of it. I think it's just in his nature. Everything he's ever done in his life, he wants to approach it with some sort of strategy. I might be wrong about that, but we'll talk to him about it. But anyway, I'm practicing for the Bassmaster Open. We're a couple weeks out now from the toughest Elite Series tournament, the second toughest Elite Series tournament, I think in history. Definitely the toughest of the years. The Elite Series now have 5 weeks off before they head up to the northern swing of, I'm going to name them. I think it's Champlain, St. Clair, maybe St. Clair, Champlain, and Thousand Islands. Those are obviously all going to be slugfest, largemouth and smallmouth, primarily smallmouth. But headed up to that northern swing, to wrap things up, we do have an Angler of the Year leader, and he has to be happy to be in the position that he's sitting in now, as opposed to the position that he was sitting in 2022, going up to the northern swing. And that is none other than Kyle Welcher. What's up, dude? Thanks for jumping on.
How you doing? Yeah, absolutely.
Good.
It's been a while since I've been on here.
It has been a while, and I've always enjoyed our shows. Then the shows that you did with Mark Jeffries before he retired. He was just in studio last week, and I kind of missed him yelling at me. So it was nice to have him bark at me a little bit. But if you guys haven't listened to any of the previous shows we've done with Kyle Welcher, you can find him on YouTube. Go back, listen. It kind of goes through your story, the whole poker, the background, really fascinating stuff that I don't really want to dive into today because we've done that in past shows. But if you're not familiar with the current Bassmaster Angler of the Year leader, go back and listen to some shows, and it'll kind of give you a little insight into your mind on how like you sound like you're a Southern dude who's just like, oh shucks, I'm just gonna go out there and catch him, throw a frog and a jig around. But dude, there's a lot going on inside your mind that's a lot deeper than just put the boat in the water, catch fish. Fair assessment?
That's pretty fair. I've actually had a lot of people say that exact thing at the poker table. They'd be like, you can play that all shucks crap if you want to. I've had people tell me that quite a few times, actually.
It is, but what a difference a year makes. Before the northern swing last year, you were like, dude, I gotta smash him to get in the classic. You actually finished in 69th in 2022. Everyone knew based on your statistics before that you're a much better angler than a 69th, which is where you finished in 2022. You got to be happy leading the Angler of the Year, and this is kind of what we're talking about after a really tricky season through the first 6 events of the Elite Series season. Yeah,
it's definitely. It feels like we've hit a lot of lakes at the wrong time this year, and that's kind of been what's made it so tricky, is because Okeechobee obviously is phenomenal fishery, has lots of big ones in it. We hit it when it was kind of tough, then we hit Seminole kind of in between waves of spawners and stuff. So it feels like this entire year we've kind of just been like a week off, and it's made all the tournaments kind of goofy.
Explain to the listeners what hitting it at the wrong time means, because obviously the Elite Series tries to go to the best bodies of water at the best times of the year. As a professional angler, what does that mean when you're on a lake at the quote wrong time, even if it's one of the top 10 lakes in the country?
So like basically lakes that don't really revolve around current, it's easy to hit them at the wrong time, because what you have waves of fish that move up, and you move up kind of in unison. So like on Seminole, we wasn't far off from hitting it. It was just like perfect. Like would have took 100 pounds, or I think it did take close to that actually, but it would have took 18 or 19 pounds a day to get paid. But we just hit it kind of when They were scattered. There's some fish in offshore grass, some fish up there in the shallow grass, some fish spawning, some fish staging, some fish still in the standing timber. We didn't really hit it with a major wave of them on some type of obvious cover, and like if you go to a river system where the fish kind of depend on current, it's going to be a lot more consistent. Like what that river has to offer is kind of what people are going to catch because they don't have anywhere else to go. But whenever you've got a lake like Seminole or Okeechobee where it's just wide open and they can kind of get anywhere for just like thousands of yards, they get in that weird stage and they suspend and they get on the weird stuff. And there's just not a concentration of them on a place that you can efficiently fish. And that's exactly what happened on kind of our first 4, it felt like.
I've never heard it explained that way before. So current equals consistency is what you're saying.
That's how I feel. Like if you go to a place and like the Tennessee River, that's the reason that it puts out all the time. And then the only time it doesn't is whenever they're not pulling current, because the fish don't have any other options. They can't just go suspend somewhere in the middle of a pocket because all the bait and stuff's on the main river. That's where they're going to be. So, but whenever you got a big round lake that's full of grass, they're the easiest ones to hit bad because the fish have so many options of places to go. And, that's kind of what Okeechobee was for a lot of people. Okeechobee actually fished better than I actually thought it would have based on my practice. But like you just seen what happened in Okeechobee a month ago, like it's got them still. Mm-hmm. But if they're not on the bank where you can efficiently fish for them, you're just not going to be able to catch those kind of weights.
I got you. You started the year off, and I'll throw Seminole in as a Florida lake. There's a little bit of it. It fishes a lot like a Florida lake. Of course, it's also close to kind of one of your favorite lakes, which is Eufaula in Alabama, which I didn't realize till the open there that it's like, oh, you go through that lake and then you're in Seminole. But anyway, that kind of blew my mind that it was that close. But 13th place to kick things off on Okeechobee, then a 15th place on Lake Seminole. Based on where you're from, where you grew up, have you always been comfortable with those Florida style lakes, or is that something that you had to kind of train and teach yourself how to be successful early in the year? Because it seems like the dang schedules always start down there and you have a back-to-backer and it's a quarter of the season, and if you don't figure it out, you're behind the 8 ball before things even get started. You're 13 days into your season and now you're already digging yourself out of the hole.
Right. Now, I mean, that's why you hear so many people talk about surviving Florida. Like every single year, that's the biggest thing is survive Florida. But you kind of hear it in every tournament. People are like, I want to survive the Sabine. I want to survive. Mm-hmm. Everybody just sounds like they want to survive all the time. But, I was always super fortunate in Florida. The first big tournament I ever fished in Florida was the Open. I came in 3rd. Then I went down to Okeechobee the next week and I came in 11th. And with me not knowing anything at all about fishing in Florida, like I was just kind of firing from the hip and I was just kind of bailed out. In my first season on the Elites, I had a top 10 in Florida. Then my second season on the Elites, I had a good finish in Florida. And then last year, I had like my 2 worst finishes ever in Florida. So it got me. I had like a 280 somethings in Florida, or 80th and 89th or something like that. So I've always had good results until last year. And then this year I had good results. But it's not really because I have any better understanding than anybody else or anything like that. I just kind of rely on fishing my strengths and trying to find areas where I feel like there's better quality fish. I mean, it's not anything that I do that's super special, but I've had up and down results now. For the first 4 or 5 tournaments in Florida, I was like, hey, I kind of got this stuff. And then last definitely pulled the rug out from under me.
I will give you a little credit though. I think it was last year that we had a Toho event, and I'm like put in some little lake headed down into Kissimmee next to that like wildlife preserve. It sounds like Jurassic Park, and you're dumping your boat in. And I'm like, oh, you're fishing the Open. And you're like, no, man, I'm just out practicing, trying to learn it, trying to put time on the water in Florida and get a better understanding. I think that's what a lot of people don't understand is how much time the top guys put in that's not on social media, that's not in practice for a tournament, that's, hey, I got 3 days and nothing to do. I'm not going to hang out. I'm going to go try to get better at it. And that's what you were doing last year down in Florida, just putting your boat in, trying to learn a new system, right?
Yeah. I mean, that's exactly what I feel like, because so Florida's one of those places where I feel like everywhere you pull up, there's big ones. Like if you go into, like there's 6 or 7 different lakes on the Kissimmee chain or whatever. Yep. Every single one of them has big ones in every single corner of the lake. But based on the conditions and kind of where the bait is and if they're spawning or what, sometimes they don't fire in one lake. And then all of a sudden you'll see where there's just one lake where all the weights come out of there. Everybody gets a check comes out of Kissimmee, or everybody gets a check comes out of Toho. So I feel like the more time you get on the water, in consecutive days on lakes like that, you kind of figure out what triggers those big ones because there's something to it because they're not always biting. But if you can put 2 or 3 days on the water and you're like, okay, the conditions yesterday was this and I only got one big bite. The conditions today were like this and I got no big bites, caught nothing but 12 inches. Then the third day, something different happens. And all of a sudden it's like every single bite's a good one. So I feel like those consecutive days on the water in places where the conditions are huge, which Florida, the conditions are huge. I feel like that helps you more than almost anywhere.
That's good stuff. How many days do you average a year on the water now? Do you have any idea in between tournaments? Because you seem like a guy who just likes to fish.
It's a lot. I really don't know, but it has to be a decent amount over 200. Like it has to be. Like I would not be surprised if it wasn't like 260 or 270, which is absurd. But I mean, it really, I'm out there a lot, a good bit, you know?
One of the things that drives me nuts is you talk to guys who are like, oh yeah, I'm on the water 300 days a year. And I'm like, dude, you're going to have to prove that to me. We're going to run the numbers here. So let's do somewhere in between that. Let's say you spend 230 days a year on the water, which you're like, oh, that doesn't sound like much. I got my handy dandy.
No, it sounds like a lot.
Yeah. So if you're on the water 63% of the days. If you do 230 days divided by 365, that's 63% of the days on the water. So if you take 7, so 63% is 2/3 of the day on the water. So let's say you spend 3 to 4 days a week on the water. Now that's extrapolated out 52 weeks, 365 days a year, 4 days. That's counting travel, everything.
Right.
Let's take this is how you guys get good. I love doing this stuff because people are like, well, what's the difference? What makes these guys that are at the top that are better? Let's say you're a diehard tournament angler. You're skipping maybe your daughter's recital for a night or your T-ball or whatever. You don't have no other hobbies. Let's say you fish 2 tournaments a month, right? So that's 24 tournaments a year, 12 months out of the year. And you practice a day for those events, right? That's a lot of time for the average guy, right?
Right.
You're still then only doing 6 days on the water a month. That's a guy who's fishing 24 tournaments a year on different. So 6 days times 12 months, you're looking at 72 days on the water for an entire year. And that's a guy who's practicing for each event for 2 days and then fishing a 1-day event every single other weekend the entire year. And you're talking 230 days as opposed to 72 days. That's the freaking difference, folks.
Right. Well, I'm not going to say I always put in 8 or 10-hour days, though. Like I got home from Sabine Monday. I fished a tournament Tuesday night, and then I fished a tournament Wednesday night. And I'm probably going to go to one tonight, but that's only going to be on the water of 3 or 4 hours, but still it's another day that I've spent 3 or 4 hours on the water. And I know when I first got live scope, I literally went almost every day. Like I bet I went 70 out of 80 days, like 2.5 months straight. I bet I went 70 of the 80 days and just used forward facing sonar every single day. Cause I had just got back from up north and got beat on pretty bad. And I was like, okay, this is not happening again. So I mean, it was like an insane stretch where I was just going every single day, and that's all I was doing. So I mean, that's kind of stuff that I feel like you have to do.
How important is stacking productive learning days together as opposed to 1 day here and 1 day there? Like that's another thing is you can be on the water, but you have to be productive on the water. And then I'll take a guy like Carl who can take a learning curve out. Now, granted, he was one of the greatest Australian bass anglers in history, but an Australian bass is like a mix between a spot and a white bass. Like it's not a large, like he didn't know it. Well, how do you get that good that quick? He was stacking multiple days on the water. He learned from the best on how to be productive on the water. When you're doing that live scope stuff, that's stacking productivity that reduces that learning curve to put you way ahead of the field, right?
Yeah, and I feel like that's way more important. Like just like I was talking about in Florida, it's fishing 2 or 3 days in a row to see how the conditions change. I feel like it's way more important. Like if you could fish 12 times a month, that was every 3 days, or you could fish 5 times a month, that 5 days in a row, I think that would be way more important because you just get the live feedback of what makes them change. And that's the thing about like bass fishing is not a game of catching. It's a game of finding. And then, like the conditions move them, and the conditions is actually what helps you catch them. So you can find them, and that's like 75% of all the tournaments. But then whenever you have the experience of the conditions and how they're going to make those fish set up, now you've got the entire package. So if you want to practice something, you need to practice finding them. And then stacking the days on top of each other is what really makes you dictate how you can catch them whenever the conditions change and stuff like that. And then you've got the total package.
That's good stuff. I mean, you got the total package right now. Have you ever been fishing at a higher level than you're fishing right now with 3 Elite Series left?
I don't think so, but I've made some mistakes this year. I've made some pretty bad mistakes actually this year. I've had some bad decisions and stuff like that. So it's definitely not been perfect, but I think it's definitely with the results, you have to say that it's the best I've ever done ever, so we'll take it. It happened at a good time.
All right. You've piqued my interest. I don't want to like dwell on negativity, but I mean, you are lead year number 1. What are some of the mistakes that you feel like you've made this year?
So there's just some like small decision-making things that have made me lose time in tournaments. So like Lake Murray, there was a shad spawn going on in the midsection of the lake and up the river. Well, I found it in practice, only had 2 good bites off of it. So day 1 of the tournament, I try to run the herring spawn stuff. I don't get a bite till like 9 o'clock. So like 2 hours in, I get my first bite. Day 2 of the tournament, I'm like, I'm gonna go try the herring spawn stuff again. I run like 3 hours, don't get a bite. So then day 3 of the tournament, I'm like, I should just run up there and catch a couple on a shad spawn. I'm like, no, I got a point down here that's got, 25 pounds on it. So I'll just run down there. Then I fish till 9:30 and don't get a bite. So it's like, that's the small little things that help you at the end of the day. Is like, if I just ran up there and fished a shad spawn for an hour and a half and catch a couple 3 3/4 or 1 3 3/4 or 1 4-pounder, that helps your day so much. And like, it's just, the first day I had to do it because I had one place they were actually schooling. Day 2 and day 3, I definitely should have bailed, and I'd have had a more complete day because I'd have been productive for the first 2 hours. When you're not productive for 2 hours of a herring spawn tournament, you're way behind the 8 ball. So I feel like that was, a bad decision on day 3, especially, was to not run and fish the shad spawn. And there's just been 2 or 3 things like that where I haven't blown the whole day, but I've wasted a decent chunk of the day, doing something that I knew better that I shouldn't have been doing. So, I mean, that kind of stuff adds up though.
Yeah. I think for a lot of guys, me included, that's when the wheels start spinning in your head and you're like, man, I've missed it. I'm 3 hours into the day now. Then you kind of compound bad decisions, and that's how days get away from you. What have you done that has allowed you to not only make up for it, but then excel for the remainder of those days, like at Murray, and not get spun out? Is that just a confidence deal where you're fishing well and you know that somehow it's going to come together?
Yeah, I mean, my whole thing is you just trust the process. Okay. I just try to throw in front of as many fish as possible. I don't try to beat myself up too much. The only time I really get negative is when I make decisions that I know better, and then I make them again, and it ends up giving me a bad result. And then but I've already learned the lesson 3 or 4 times. That's whenever I really start to dwell on stuff. I'm like, you idiot! Like you already know this. But other than that, like, I just try to stay in productive water, keep throwing in front of bass, throw in front of as many bass as I possibly can in a day. And then, like Murray was a good one because I had enough bedfish where I was going to have 14 or 15 pounds. Like I didn't feel like I could catch 20 or 21 off bed, but I knew I could go bed fishing in an hour and a half or 2 hours and catch 14 pounds. So that was one that kind of keeps you sane. So like the first half of every day or the first 3 or 4 hours every day, I'm trying to catch a big one off these points. And then the midsection of the day, there's a little bit of a lull, I'm picking off bedfish, So that's kind of the way that I was scheduling out that day. So I still had a thing to change and go do. And whenever you completely make a change, it kind of freshens up your confidence, So I ain't had a bite doing this for 2.5 hours. I go make a completely different change, and the confidence is back, because I'm doing something completely different now. So I make drastic changes whenever I start feeling like, I start feeling rushed sometimes, and I start feeling like, I'm getting the day's getting away from me, and I'll just make a completely different change. Like I'm not going to start, chasing ghosts and stuff like that. So that's kind of my whole approach to it.
That's interesting. So you're not afraid to switch up, but do you go into a day with kind of in your head how you see it going down, like the first 2 hours, the next two, the last two, that? Or are you a guy who has a plan for where you're going to start and you're going to let the day take you where it goes, and sometimes you have to deviate from that plan?
I usually only have a starting spot, and then
Okay.
I'll have places that I know are similar, or places that I have marked that I know are, higher percentage places. I just kind of I try to feel out the pace of the day. Like if you spent your first 2 hours and you've caught one fish that you really don't even need to weigh in the first place, it's time to start making big changes. But if you spend 2 hours and you've had, 3 bites and they're all 3 good ones, but you've lost 2 of them. Well, now you've had 3 bites in 2 hours. You're actually at a good pace as far as the bites you're getting, but you're not as good pace as far as what you have in the live well. So I just try to kind of say, the pace of the day and how fast the bites are coming and how much water you have left to run and how long it's going to take you to run it. That's the kind of stuff that makes me want to run something and stick with it, or else change. It just kind of like, because I feel like when you're having a good day, you're catching, 10 or 12 keepers in a day. Mm-hmm. It usually seems like if you catch 25 keepers in a day, you're around more little ones, it seems like. So I feel like that's how many bites I want to usually generate in a day is 10 or 12, because I feel like that's the optimal thing for catching a big bag is about that many bites. So I just kind of pace out the day like that. And if it's not going the way that I feel like it needs to go, that's when I make one of those big changes.
So you're letting your day dictate your decisions. You're not letting your decisions dictate the day.
Yeah, no, I definitely let the day dictate the decisions. Like I change stuff all the time and do stuff that's completely different, So if I did it on late.
Have you had anywhere this year? Yeah, go ahead. Is that like where you were like, man, I was not planning on doing that today?
Yeah, no, I definitely did. So day 2 of lake, I had a place where I fished in there in practice and I never caught a keeper like at all. So the first day I got super fortunate. I caught them really fast off the places where the big fish usually get. I didn't catch any big ones, but like I had a really good day. I run everything I had good from day 1. And I'm like, I ain't got nothing. I think I had 0. So I run into this pocket where I didn't have a bite. I didn't keep in practice. And I'm like, I know the potential's here, but I didn't see the potential in practice, but it feels like the potential's here. And what happened is it was the back of a pocket. And when I went in there in practice, there's like a lot of stagnant water kind of floating. Like you could just see there's like bubbles on the water and like it just wasn't moving. Well, we had a lot of rain after day 1 of lake. So I'm like, if they're ever going to bite in there, because it has a natural flow in this creek, if they're ever going to bite in there, the rain would have been and washed it out, and it's going to have those fish sitting up on the high percentage stuff because there's been a little bit of moving water. So I make a complete different. I run in there and I catch like everything that I weigh in there on day 2 out of this one little place, and it was like 12 something that I ended up having, which on lay was actually a pretty good bag. I think it was like 12.5 or something like that. Caught every single one of them out of there, but it was just because I just made a change. But I've made those changes a lot, and it not worked out. That's just one of the times where it happened to work out. Like I've made those hero runs before and get there and it not work out, and you got to turn around and run all the way back to wherever you were. Like that's part of it. But and that's going to happen, and that going in. But if you think it's your best shot of doing the best you can that day, you just have to do it. You got to try.
Good stuff. We are talking with current Angler of the Year leader Kyle Welcher. When we come back, I want to talk about the toughest tournament of the year that probably resulted in some decision making, but your best tournament of the season, and that is the one that vaulted you into the lead in the Angler of the Year with 3 events left. That would be the Sabine River. It is a BTL on a Monday with Kyle Welcher. We'll be back right after this.
The new Puma STS has been redesigned from the ground up. With the angler, design, function, and performance in mind, nothing on this new offering was compromised, and the only thing carried over from the previous version is the name. Based on the Soft Touch series hull that started with the flagship Jaguar, this new model is nimble and performs incredibly well at all speeds with either a 250 or 300 horsepower engine. Featuring a new 96-inch wide-body footprint, this hull measures out at 20 foot 7 inches in length. Industry-leading design coupled with tournament-winning performance. The Puma STS from Basscat. Feel the rush.
You know, a lunker, a two-sandwich-eating kind of man. And on behalf of all of those bigger, I gotta say it once and for all, it's bad enough that the fish look smaller in our hands. The last thing we should have to worry about is getting quality outdoor clothing that fits. AVCO, any fish, any water.
Shoreline Boat and RV, dock rash, storm damage, collision repair, that deep scratch or gouge from trying to access that secret creek. Shoreline Boat and RV can get your prized possession back in mint condition and looking good on the water, fast. All repairs are done in-house, so they're able to get your boat or RV back to brand new, quickly. All Shoreline's work comes with a rock-solid warranty. Find out more at shorelineboatandrv.com. Kansas City, Austin, and Tulsa.
I'm the kind of guy that never leaves the house without a pocket knife, and Gamakatsu's come out with the EDC series of knives. EDC stands for Everyday Carry, so whether you're on the water or off, you can always have it with you. The best thing about it to me is that assisted open feature. With this D2 blade, you've got it right here at your fingertips, so if you can't find your scissors, you need to cut a knot, you need to cut your braid, you've always got it. Make sure you check it out. Never leave home without your Gamakatsu EDC knife.
Born in Japan, using technology, innovation, and precision, Sunline produces the widest selection of fishing lines at the most technologically advanced line factory in the world. Manufactured at the strictest tolerances to produce victories at the highest levels of tournament bass fishing. From household names like Christie, Swindle, and Cruz, to young guns like Cook, Logan, New, and Welcher, they all trust Sunline to take them to the top of the leaderboard. Choose the line that will give you the strength to guarantee your confidence. Sunline.
Welcome back, BTL on a Monday, talking with Kyle Welcher. According to the Sunline commercial there, you're a young gun. I feel like you've been doing this a long time, though, dude.
Yeah, this is my 4th year on the Elite, so it's added up.
Is it crazy how fast, like, does 4 years seem fast? Do you feel like you're on a year by year? Does it feel like you're a veteran now? Like, where do you feel like you stand in your career?
I don't feel like I'm a veteran. I do actually still feel like a young gun, I guess. Like, I still feel like I'm trying to just, keep improving, keep getting better, keep, get better sponsors. That's just still how I feel, is I'm still like trying to climb the ladder. And I mean, I definitely am. I'm still attempting to, keep improving in all aspects of being a professional fisherman. So I still feel definitely like I'm a young gun who's trying to make it, still grinding.
Yeah. Is there any aspect that you feel like you really have figured out of the whole thing of being a professional angler, and any aspect that you still really feel like you're struggling with?
I feel like I'm trying to kind of getting better at all of them at the same time. If there's, the fishing part is the one that stunts you the most, because finding them suckers is hard. Like, it's actually really hard. So the thing that I feel like I need to improve at the most is still fishing, still catching them. So that's what I work at the most. I think about the most, the business side of it, all that is, kind of more ironed out, I feel like. That's all just negotiations and what people agree upon. So, I mean, that's easier for me, I feel like.
I got you. Let's talk about the Sabine River, Orange, Texas, 7th place finish, 4-day total weight of 36 pounds, 6 ounces. What is it like going into this thing knowing, man, I'm just looking for 8 to 10 pounds a day? I mean, that's got to be a totally different type of mentality.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely is. Like, it's an insane fishery. But, if you look at all these lakes, they kind of have an above average bag, and they kind of have like a potential. So, like, we go to Murray, 17 pounds is like the average bag. We go to Sabine, 6.5 pounds is like the average bag. Yeah. Like that's just what it is. Like, it's in perspective. Like whenever you go to, like, you follow Oklahoma, there's going to be an average bag that everybody catches, and do it above that, it's better. On Sabine, it just happens to be half as much as it is almost everywhere else. So, I mean, you get a lot of bites there. I think every single day I caught at least 25 fish. I caught at least 15 keepers. Every day of the tournament, I caught, like, for sure, at least 15 keepers. The first day I probably caught 30, and the second day I probably caught 25 keepers. So you just kind of got to put it in perspective that a pound a quarter one's a good one. a 2-pounder is a giant, and anything bigger than that's a miracle, and you just set the hook as many times as you possibly can. And I mean, I don't actually feel like it's a bad fishery for as far as getting bites and how many bass are in the place. It's just, you're not going to go there and catch 20 pounds or even 15 pounds, most likely. It's a super tough as far as quality, but the quantity there is amazing. Like I feel like it's really good as far as how many bites you get, and they get exactly where you want them to get. Like you drive down a place and you say, there's supposed to be a bass right there. There is a bass right there every single time on that place.
Is that go back to current and tide?
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely. Every time I've been there, I have fished places that, like, the only reason they would be there is because of the current and the tide, and there's always, there's a tide that goes in and out, but there's always a little bit more that goes out because there's natural flow of all these rivers. So that influences my decision making on those places. Is if the outgoing tide's a little longer, that means the natural undercuts from upriver are going to be a little deeper and all that type of stuff. So that's just the way that I think about it.
I think the average guy, and I'm including myself in this, I don't put enough emphasis, because you've mentioned it 2 or 3 times during this, and I've talked to other guys too, especially like TVA guys, good TVA guys who catch them throughout the TVA system tend to do well throughout the country too. You look at how many careers that's on. Don't understand the nuances of current, whether it's visible current that you can see or subtle current under the water that you can't see, and how much that impacts where the fish are and how those fish feed. And we fish non-productive water.
Right. And even I don't really understand it at a high level when you're talking about out in that 16 to 20 foot deep range. Mm-hmm. Like I really don't know that much as well, but I know by talking to people, exactly what you said, it moves them tremendously. If there's no current or a lot of current or middle current, and those guys know, like they look at their phone and see how much they're going to generate that day and know the exact cast where they're going to catch them. And that's the difference.
I've got that written down here. We can get info in the opens. And I mean, if I know someone who's there, I'll talk to them. And I can't tell you how many high level guys that'll be like, man, you need to see how many gates they have open. You need to see what they're generating. You're on a lake that you typically wouldn't even think that makes a difference on. But the guys who catch them understand how that moves. And I guess that has to just go back to the biology of the bass looking to expend as little energy as possible for the highest reward, which if you can sit somewhere and have calories coming to you instead of expending calories to go get them, it's just a survival of the fittest.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. And I mean, it just makes everything easier for the bass, but except it gives them less options of where they can actually position. So it makes everything easier for the fishermen because it gives the bass less options where they can be. So I mean, it makes the whole world go round if you're on a river system at all. Like that current's a deal.
All right, can we go through some tactics and lures? Because I feel like you just throw like a crankbait and a frog and maybe a worm a little bit, and that's about it. And you just go junk it up and mix it around and catch them on the same 5 or 6 baits anywhere. You're a shallow water power guy. You're Kyle Welcher. Am I off on that? Or like, what have we gone through the gauntlet on baits and techniques this year? Have you stuck to kind of a core group of things that have kind of pushed you to the top?
Yeah, no, the schedule really dictates all that. And on this one right here, like I have been able to just straight fish my strengths. And that's the good thing about hitting lakes when they're a little bit goofy. And that's like a lot of the guys in the top 10. Like if you look at the guys in the top 10 of AOI, every single one of them kind of does their own thing. And that's what takes you through those goofy tournaments more than being like a shallow water power fishing person like that. That's not even as important as really, really understanding the way that you're fishing these tournaments. So, like Okeechobee was weird, Seminole was weird, Murray was weird. The guys who fish their strengths in these and made it work are the ones who, ended up having the most consistent first 6 tournaments. So, I mean, that's really been the biggest thing for this. And for me, I have stayed relatively shallow and power fishing, frog, swim jig. I flipped a good bit. I punched some, just the stuff that I love doing. My most finessey thing I have done is flip a worm around on day 3 or day 4 of tournaments whenever it gets super tough. And I'm in areas where it's already, I've been through them 25 times. So I'll go back with something else and try to get another bite too. And I have really been able to fish my strengths in every single tournament this year. Murray was the toughest one for me as far as generating bites. But even in that one, I fished my strengths in literally the first 6 tournaments and couldn't be happier about the baits that I've ended up catching them on. Because it's been, like you said, the same 4 or 5: frog, swim jig, flipping, a jig here and there, and that's about it. A wacky rig's hard to beat to get an extra bite, but that's been about all I've thrown this year.
We were talking a little bit before we started recording this episode. The top 5 to me is fascinating. Heading to smallmouth country. There should be some largemouth that play there, but we're headed to smallmouth country for the last 3. But It's you, Brandon Cobb, John Cox, Tyler Rivette, and Drew Cook. Now, we all know how Rivette's done it. He's done a little bit of the live scope, but the dude's a power fisherman. He's a shallow water power fisherman. Don't get it twisted. You just have to know how to use live scope and found a unique deal. But and then Cobb had 2 in South Carolina. You'd expect him to do well there, but he's a shallow water guy. John Cox, obviously a shallow water guy. Drew Cook, obviously a shallow water guy. But those top 5, you guys have all been able to fish your strengths in the first 5, and you've caught them where you were supposed to, kind of doing it the way you were supposed to, with a few exceptions and some anomalies. But as a whole, that's a big group of guys. And I wouldn't pick any of those guys. I know Cox has caught some up north, but I am super excited to watch the Angler of the Year race in the last 3, because there's going to be a bunch of guys chasing you and a bunch of guys trying to hold on. Now, if I remember right, you caught the biggest bass of the tournament on the St. Lawrence River last year, right? Didn't you have a 6.13 or something like that?
Yep. 6.12. Yep.
So you go into these last 3. What is your game plan? Are you thinking about Angler of the Year? You got buffoons like me and all the other media guys going, hey, you're leading the Angler of the Year heading into the last 3. What are your thoughts? You can't help but think about it. So just kind of, what are your plans for those last 3 tournaments, and how comfortable are you up there?
So I'm not super comfortable up there, but sometimes that's a good thing. Sometimes you get a little bit too comfortable whenever you get blindsided by some bad decision making. So, that those 3 tournaments are literally all about finding them. And that's it. You could write down right now the 4 baits that's going to top 10 all 3 of those tournaments.
Yep.
Easy. Like you could literally write up on a piece of paper right now and you'll be right on almost all of them. But nobody knows where those big schools of smallmouth are going to be, especially on St. Clair, because they can get anywhere out in there. So my whole thing for those next 3 is I'm trying to do as much research as I possibly can and figure out where I think I can find, the best population of fish that I can fish for efficiently, because I'm not a good drifter. I don't drift. I will not go up there and drift at all. I just can't do it. I'm not going to do it. It doesn't fit my personality style. So I'm not going to catch them like that. So, but I know some guys are, but I'm just going to commit to fish, trying to catch a little bit differently. But, as far as being in the lead for AOI, it's a super slim lead right now. Literally, it can flip flop at any time, so whoever goes up there and catches them in the next 3 is going to win this. That's what it's going to take. And as far as if I'm thinking about AOI, that's the goal going in every single year. Like when you get there to the first tournament, that's what you want to win. I definitely haven't yet, but we've got a shot at it like everybody else does. So, I keep getting close to stuff. So if I keep throwing my name in the hat, eventually they're going to call mine. So, that's kind of the way I'm going into these next 3 is it's an opportunity. I don't feel any extra pressure because I'm going out of my wheelhouse, but it is an opportunity to, achieve a lifelong goal. So I'm going to try to capitalize on it the best that I possibly can. If it works out, that's great. It'll be my most proudest moment in fishing by far. And if it don't, I'm not going to be super beat up about it, because it's not like I've got a 90-point lead and I'm going to have to blow it. It's I've still got to go make 3 top 20s, and that's not easy to do fishing against 104 of the best in the world. So, my focus right now, though, is finding the smallmouth, because I have struggled with that in the past.
That's interesting. Typically in the past years, you look going into the northern swing and there's a couple northern guys that are going to make their move. But if you're going to do a pure northern guy, you got to go all the way down to 10th in Jay Shakuret. We obviously saw what he did at Thousand Islands last year, but he's almost 100 points behind you. You can throw Iconelli in there. He's on fire this year. He's a northern guy. He knows how that works. But then, you got to go down. You got Polinick in 19th, but you got the Johnstons and Gussie and stuff. Dude, I think it's going to be real fascinating going into the last 3, because you can have some of those guys that are supposed to catch them that catch them. and they're still not going to be able to make up enough ground. I think this one is going to be a last day angler of the year. I really do. And I think you're going to have,
it's gotta be,
you're going to have guys who this is their wheelhouse and guys who are outside their comfort zone based on these standings that are going to be battling it out on days 3 and 4 at the St. Lawrence River for the Angler of the Year. And I can't wait to watch that.
Yeah, no, it's going to be exciting. I hope I'm still relevant at the last one, because I just want to have an opportunity. And I plan on going up there and catching it, but we got to find them first.
All right, that works. We're going to take our final break of the show. When we come back, I want to talk with you. Like I said, you're the number one guy. You've had the top best finishes through the first 6. I want to talk with you about execution. I've had this conversation with guys before. I want to know how important execution has been in staying at the top of the leaderboard, what you expect when you go out on the water from a bite to land ratio. Because I'm really curious in that type of stuff. It's BTL on a Monday. Kyle Welcher. I need to find the commercials here before I go to the commercials. All right, we'll be back right after this.
The great thing about the new Sensation soft plastics from Big Bite Baits, heavily scented, super soft, buoyant, comes in 7 great new shapes. I've got a couple of them of my signature series, the cliffhanger worm and the ram-tailed craw. Great for a flipping jig, football jig, swim jig, all that. Several other great shapes. Really excited about it. We've worked over the last year, catches fish all over the country, and I think it's going to catch fish for people everywhere you try it.
The Spro Little John crankbait has been around for almost 15 years, and it is one of my go-to crankbaits whenever I need a fish in the boat, so you can never have enough new colors. That's why Spro's coming out with a handful of new colors, including Pearl Shad, which has this bleached out white look, but it's got this pearlescent, really, really pretty. We've got Copper Shad, which looks amazing in the water. It's got that purple flake on the back, really, really pops in the water. And then if you want some real pop, we've got Sparkle Shad, nothing but sparkles all over this thing. And then last but not least, we've got the matte Sexy Shad, just a really different looking color for a crankbait. So you want to give them a little different look, that matte Sexy Shad is definitely the one to go with. All these colors are available in the original Little John and the MD.
Are you looking to install your own fishing electronics? The solution is the Bass Tank Power Harness. It takes the guesswork out of installation. No more voltage issues or interference. Designed by an engineer so that you can get professional results right there in your own garage. Installation done right with the help of the Bass Tank Power Harness. You can feel confident knowing that your installation was done right. The Bass Tank Power Harness. Give us a call or order yours today at thebasstank.com.
Get the best patterns backed by tournament data. Start by finding the best 10% of your lake. Know exactly what to look for and what to throw. After that, just put them in the boat. Try the Deep Dive app today.
Look at that beast right there.
Elite Series Pro Daryl Gleason here. My Pro Guide batteries keep me going on those long tournament days and long practice days. Always plenty of juice, never fail. The best part about Pro Guide batteries, it's the people behind the company. They have over 40 years experience in the battery business, keeping all of us fishermen out on the water longer, catching more fish. Check them out at ProGuideBatteries.com.
What's up, Bass Talk Live fans? Brandon Polnick here. And ever since I won a couple Bassmaster Elite Series events on X-Zone Lures, I've been getting a bunch of questions of what makes them so special and different. And really, the truth is, it's in the details. The little details, things like no cheap fillers in their plastic. That gives you more lifelike action, more realistic and vibrant colors. But don't just take my word for it. Go to www.xzonelures.com and check them out for yourself.
Have you considered purchasing new electronics for your rig? The type of mounts you choose to protect your investment should be part of the decision-making process. No matter if you prefer 1, 2, or 3 graphs up front, Beatdown Outdoors has a solution for you. Adjustable, versatile, rigid, and made in the USA. What's your ultimate electronics setup? Check out the full selection of Beatdown Outdoors products by visiting beatdownoutdoors.com. All right, welcome back, BTL on a Monday. Kyle's screen just went black there as we ended the show today. Want to remind everybody that it is a recorded show week, but we are going to have a big week. We got a live show. Based on when we recorded this, tomorrow night, Tuesday night, 7:30 p.m. Central Time. Frank Scalish will be doing day 4 on a Tuesday. So try to make sense of that. But if you like watching day 4 and don't have a chance to watch it live, like if you work, for instance, we'll be doing day 4 on a Tuesday. So you can jump on and watch that at 7:30 Central Time PM. And then on Wednesday, we'll be back with the Bassmaster Classic, reigning and defending champion Jeff Gustafson. I kind of gave it a shot to Gussie to get the half of the season under his belt. And then he actually texted me. He's like, hey, man, I'm free now. Can we get on BTL? So we will have Gussie on. I don't know if we can hear Kyle now. Can you still hear me, Kyle?
I can, yeah.
Yeah, I got a black screen, but we'll close it out on that. That's fine. We're still good for the iTunes and podcast portion of it. But I wanted to close out the show by talking about execution, because I watch your YouTube channel a lot. And you're a guy who sets the hook, makes a couple cranks, and that sucker's in the boat. And guys who have had a lot of experience and a lot of Egler of the years, Jason Christie with a classic champ, a lot of Elite Series and FLW Tour wins. It seems like there's just a group of guys who don't screw around after they get a bite, and you're one of those guys. What has been your hook to land ratio this year?
It's been really, really good, actually. I've had a couple that came off, but most of those have been instantly. Like I had 2 big ones on a frog on Okeechobee that I lost, but I lost them both within like 2 seconds. So I really never hooked the fish properly in the first place. But other than that, it's been really, really good. Like I haven't had any major, problems this year. Haven't lost any real giant ones that really would have hurt me a lot. I've twice this year, I've lost some that would have gave me a top 10. But other than that, those weren't like anything crazy. It was just like 1 4.5 pounder that would have caught out a 2 3/4, that would have moved me up that far. So this year's been really, really good. I was actually talking to myself on Murray, had a really big one on a wacky rig, and the fish out there jumping, and I got like 4 at the time, and it's like a 5 pounder. And I'm like, okay, this is like a 98% lander. Like, we're going to land this fish like 98% of the time. Just calm down a little bit, calm down. And the fish just jumps. And it takes like a minute and a half to catch it. But that's what I told myself. Like, you're going to land this fish 98% of the time. Everything's good. Just chill. So, the execution's been really, really good this year. It could have been better. It's not been perfect, but it's never going to be perfect. Like, that's just not a reality.
Are you a guy who, so this kind of changed my life, was when I listened to Rick Clunn talking to Chris Zaldane about keeping the hook point moving towards the boat at all times. Have you heard that? Is that kind of something that you subscribe to, is always keeping that fish moving towards the boat and not letting them get into weird angles?
Especially with braid. Like, I'm huge on that with braid, but when you got a 5 pounder on a spinning rod, you can't always pull the hook towards the boat, like they got to make sure they're on and they're strong. But but with braid especially, I don't give them any slack at all. Like I make up every inch of ground that I can, and then I try to swing them in the boat. And everything besides pretty much cranking and a spinning rod, that's exactly what I try to do. Is I try to get them there as fast as possible. Because the more times they jump, the bigger the hole gets in their mouth. The longer they fight, the bigger the hole gets in their mouth. It's just best to get them in there as fast as possible. You can play with them on practice days and fight them. In tournaments, better get them in the boat.
That's good stuff. Hey, I love watching your YouTube channel. I want to make sure if everybody hasn't followed it, heck, you've exploded on that. A really good quality content on that. Kyle Welcher on YouTube and other social media. Anything else you want to get in here before I let you go, Kyle?
It's all good with me. Thank you, sir.
All right. Hey, I greatly appreciate it. Good luck in the last 3. You only have to answer the question for another 5 weeks before you're back on the water about what it's like leading the Angler of the Year.
Right.
All right. Have a good one. Thanks, dude. I greatly appreciate the time.
See you, man.
See you. All right. That was Kyle Welcher. Definitely one of the headiest guys on tour, as far as thinking and smart anglers. Greatly appreciate his time. Like I said, I mentioned BTL will be back on Tuesday, tomorrow, the 13th. Tuesday the 13th. June 13th, with a live show, 7:30 p.m. Central Time. Frank Scalish, day 4 on day 2. Other than that, I like talking to the guys like they just a fishy dude. He just loves to fish. Do some math, like stack of those days. If you think you know how many days you fish a year, actually put the pen to paper, and I think you'll be shocked at how few it is. I mean, the dude's spending 200 days a year on the water. All right, this has been another edition of BTL. We'll see everybody tomorrow night for a live show with Frank Scalish, and then back on Wednesday with Gussie. Big shout out to Angler of the Year leader Kyle Welcher. We'll talk to everybody tomorrow. See ya.